So talking about animals carrying their burdens, let's say you see someone's donkey carrying a burden, and it's so heavy they fall down, the donkey falls down, and you're about to go to help them, but then you realize that donkey belongs to that guy down the street who you hate and whose dog always poops on your lawn. Do you think you have to help out? Do you have to help out the donkey or no? Yes. Text number 2. Who is text number 2 and 3?
We are required to relieve an animal of its burden, even if we do not like its owner, do not know its owner, or even if it is ownerless. If you see the donkey of him who hates you fallen down under his burden, don't leave him. You shall surely help him with it.
And elsewhere it says,
You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fallen down by the way and hide yourself from them. You shall surely help him to lift them up again.
so here's another example of one that is, like there's rules for people and there's a similar rule for animals. So if you're harvesting, if you come to my vineyard and you're helping me to harvest my grapes, do you think that you're allowed to take a bucket and fill it up with the grapes for yourself to take home and make wine? No. Do you think you're allowed to eat some grapes as you're going because you get kind of thirsty and hot? Yeah. Okay. So that you're allowed to do. So when an animal is grinding up the grain, do you think they're allowed to eat the grain, or you think you can put a muzzle on them so they don't eat the grain? Let's find out. Text number 4.
We are forbidden to muzzle an ox while it is working in the field, so it can eat as it works.
Deuteronomy 25:4 says,
You shall not muzzle the ox when he treads out the grain.
And then they're comparing that to how human workers are also allowed to eat the produce. So who has text 5 and 6?
Just as we must allow human workers to eat from the produce they are harvesting. When you come into your neighbor's vineyard, then you may eat of grapes you fill at your own pleasure, but you shall not put any in your vessel.
And elsewhere in Deuteronomy it says,
When you come into your neighbor's standing grain, then you may pluck the ears with your hand, but you shall not move a sickle to your neighbor's standing grain.
right, so you can take a little bit and munch on it, but you can't like get out your like harvesting equipment and start harvesting to take it home and make some bread. Okay. So now going back to you asked about the sabbatical. You asked if the animals get a sabbatical off. What the animals do, so the sabbatical year, every 7 years you have to let your field lie fallow. You're not allowed to cultivate it. But certain people get to eat what actually grows on it. So who is text number 7?
Animals permitted to eat the grain from fallow fields the sabbatical year.
So this is in Exodus.
But the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave the animal of the field shall eat. In like manner you shall deal with your vineyard and with your olive grove.
So this is another example of the animals being incorporated right in there with other defenseless people, like the poor. It's like the poor, the animals, they're all being thought about. Does that surprise anyone or please anyone, or any thoughts or comments about that?
So how often are they allowed to eat?
How often are they allowed to eat?
Every 7th year.
No. They're allowed to eat every day. But they're just saying that on the 7th year, like I'm not allowed to harvest my lemon tree and sell it for profit. I have to leave the lemons up there. And the animals can eat it, and my neighbors can eat it, the poor people can eat it, but I'm not allowed to sell it. But you do ask a good question about how often are they allowed to eat. The Talmud says that you're not allowed to purchase an animal unless you can make provisions to feed it. Unless you can afford to feed it, you're not even allowed to have one. And that if you're out on a hike, right? If you get home from this hike tonight and you are so hungry, you're famished, and you walk in and your dog is totally famished, who do you feed first, you or your dog? Your dog. And this is a great thing to teach kids. My mom, we didn't have animals my whole life, but we always had plants. And when we came home from a trip, the plants got watered first. And then we took care of our own needs. And this comes from text 15. Jumping to text 15. Who has that one?
I do. Okay.
person must feed animals before feeding self, and may not purchase an animal unless he has made provisions to feed it, and a person must feed his animals before he feeds himself.
So this comes from a passage in Deuteronomy, and I'll explain how it works. Can you read the Deuteronomy?
I will give grass in your fields for your cattle, and you shall eat and be full. But when
Okay.
it says you shall eat,
Yes.
is it talking to the cattle?
No. So it says, I will give grass in your fields for your cattle, and you shall eat and be full. How do the rabbis get from that to saying the animals' needs for food come before your own? Think sentence structure. Think simpler. Really easy.
Spiritually fulfilling, if you.
Easier. Much easier. I'm going to read it to you again.
If you have no animals, you don't.
Yes, they wrote about the cattle first. Yeah, the cattle come first in the sentence. Therefore, we have to feed the cattle first, and then you will eat and be full. So sometimes, the commentary on the Torah is very complicated and very hard to understand. Sometimes it's really very simple. Oh, that makes sense. They come first, right? Okay, let's see. So before that, we were on text 8. Oh, so there's a bunch of commandments that have to do with the concern for physical or psychological suffering of animals. And this first one is text 8.
I have that.
Okay.
It says they may not plow the field using animals of different species in Deuteronomy 20:10, because this would be a hardship to the animals.
And then the Deuteronomy passage is,
You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together.
why would that be a hardship? Does anyone know? Different pace. Yeah. They work at a different pace. They have a different style of walking. So if you harness them together, it would be very uncomfortable for them.
Or I was thinking they might start to bother each other. They wouldn't get along.
Maybe they just don't get along with each other. Maybe those two breeds of animals just don't get along with each other. I would really bet that if two animals do not get along, that you would probably not be allowed to harness them to each other. I wouldn't be surprised. Jim, is it Jim? Or Joe? Joe.
Well, the image of an ox and a donkey yoked together frequently used as an image of poverty and desperation.
Why is that?
Well, I don't know, but I say it's in many art forms that's a sign of desperation on the part of the people who are there.
Maybe,
The picture.
maybe because
they have done that.
it works so badly, I guess.
But they were reduced. They have been reduced to doing it.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. So it's not clear from Jewish tradition whether or not we think that animals experience feelings the same way as humans do, but there are some texts that are going to come up next, which I think make it. It seems to me that that's what Jewish tradition is teaching us. That we should think about how it feels to the animals. So text 9 is the first one of these series.
We are not permitted to kill an animal in the same day as its young. Leviticus 22:28. Whether it is a cow or ewe, you shall not kill it and its young both in one day.
Okay, so this is from Leviticus, which is filled with all kinds of rules. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think it could be a humanitarian thing? You're not allowed to kill the mother and the child? You don't think it matters?
I think it's practical. You want the young one to have its own young so you can continue your flock or whatever it is.
Yeah, it could be a sustainability thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the next one from Deuteronomy is also one that we use a lot in eco-Judaism for sustainability, but it's also one that people that want to show that we care about how the animals feels also invoke. So text 10 and 11.
And are specifically commanded to send away a mother bird